Hello, history buffs, time travelers, and scholars. The Middle Ages are full of famous mysteries that continue to puzzle us, like what really happened to King Edward II or the princes in the Tower, and the true meaning behind the mysterious Voynich manuscript. This period, often called the Dark Ages, is known for its lack of information, making it harder for historians to understand how or why certain events happened. This missing knowledge leaves plenty of room for wild theories and imaginative stories. The Middle Ages were also a tough and dangerous time, marked by constant wars, religious persecution, the Crusades, and a devastating pandemic that killed up to 50 million people, possibly wiping out half of Europe's population. The Church had a strong influence on everyday life, and people often gave events a mystical or divine meaning, sometimes exaggerating them to fit these beliefs. The Lost Book of Madness, Inventio Fortunata. The Inventio Fortunata is one of the history's most mysterious missing texts, believed to be a remarkable travel log from the 14th century. This extraordinary book, supposedly written by a Franciscan friar from Oxford in the 1360s, documented his incredible journeys to the North Atlantic on behalf of King Edward III. The friar reportedly ventured into the Arctic Circle, traveling beyond Iceland and Greenland, and possibly reaching Markland on the Canadian coast. Sadly, by the 1940s, when explorers and historians sought the Inventio Fortunata, it had vanished. But how do we even know it existed? References to it appear in other works, such as a summary found in a second text called the Itinerarium, written by a Brabantian traveler from modern-day Holland. The Itinerarium inspired many early Arctic maps, but it too disappeared over time. Before it was lost, mapmaker Gerardus Mercator copied some of the information from the Itinerarium into a letter sent to John Dee, an English scholar and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. However, Dee's letter was misplaced, and his notebook, containing fragments of the text, was nearly destroyed by fire. These surviving notes, written in a jumble of Latin, English, and Dutch, offer only a fragmented glimpse of what the original Inventio Fortunata might have contained. The mystery deepened in 1956, when a letter was discovered in a Spanish archive, written by English merchant John Day to Christopher Columbus. The letter expressed regret over being unable to locate the Inventio Fortunata. Instead, Day sent Columbus a copy of Marco Polo's book and information about new lands discovered by John Cabot. Despite these tantalizing hints, the Inventio Fortunata remains one of the most enigmatic lost books of the medieval period, leaving historians and explorers to wonder what secrets it might have held. The Lost Explorer, John Cabot. John Cabot, born around 1450 in Genoa, Italy, was inspired by the stories of Marco Polo and his descriptions of the riches of Asia. Eager to see these wonders for himself, Cabot planned to sail west across the Atlantic, similar to Christopher Columbus. Like Columbus, however, he struggled to find financial support for his journey. After being turned down in mainland Europe, he moved with his family to England to seek backing. In 1496, after Columbus's successful voyages to the Americas, King Henry VII of England granted Cabot permission to explore under the English flag. The King's Charter allowed him to sail with up to 5 ships to discover lands previously unknown to Christians. Cabot's goal was to reach Asia, specifically China and Japan, which were believed to be full of spices, silks, gold, and jewels. If successful, England could become a global trading powerhouse. In 1497, Cabot set sail from Bristol with a small crew of 18 aboard his ship, the Matthew. After a month at sea, they landed on the coast of what is now Newfoundland, claiming it for King Henry. At the time, Cabot believed he had reached an island off the coast of China. As a reward, he received a modest sum of £10 for his discovery. The following year, in 1498, Cabot embarked on another voyage, this time with 5 ships and 300 men, aiming to travel even further west in search of Japan. What happened next remains a mystery. Some speculate that Cabot died at sea, while others suggest he might have settled in North America or returned to England after a successful expedition. One crew member from the voyage was recorded as living in London in 1510, but Cabot himself vanished without a trace. His son, Sebastian Cabot, followed in his father's footsteps, becoming an explorer and leading his own voyages, including a trip from South America to Spain in 1528. The fate of John Cabot remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Age of Exploration. The Lost Tomb of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was one of the most powerful and feared leaders in history. He united the Mongol tribes and created the largest continuous empire the world has ever seen, stretching from Asia to Europe. His leadership and conquests shaped the Middle Ages, and his name is remembered as a symbol of strength and strategy. However, despite his immense legacy, the location of his tomb remains one of the history's greatest mysteries. In 1227, Genghis Khan died while his army was in the middle of putting down a revolt. To prevent his enemies from discovering his death and using it to weaken the empire, his followers kept his palace bypassing a closely guarded secret. According to accounts, anyone who saw the funeral procession was immediately executed to protect the secrecy of his burial. There are many legends about what happened to Genghis Khan's body. Some stories, including one retold by the famous explorer Marco Polo, say that 2,000 slaves who worked on the funeral were killed by soldiers to ensure they couldn't reveal the location of the tomb. These soldiers, in turn, were executed by another group of guards, who later took their own lives once the burial was complete. Other legends say extraordinary efforts were made to hide the grave. One story claims that a river was diverted to flow over the burial site so that no one could ever find it. Another legend suggests trees were planted on the site to disguise it, making it look like a natural forest. There are even conflicting reports about what was buried with Genghis Khan. Some accounts claim his body wasn't buried at all, and only his personal items like his shirt, boots, and tent were laid to rest. Others believe his coffin was empty when it arrived in Mongolia, further deepening the mystery. Modern researchers think his final resting place could be near Burkhan Khaldun Mountain in Mongolia. This mountain held great spiritual significance for Genghis Khan, as it was where he often prayed to the sky god, Tengri. Despite several expeditions to the area, including one as recently as 2015, the exact location of the tomb remains unknown. The search for Genghis Khan's tomb has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and adventurers for centuries. If discovered, the tomb could provide incredible insights into the life and culture of the Mongols. But for now, the burial site of one of history's greatest leaders remains hidden, protected by time and countless legends. The Lost Caliph. In 985 AD, 375 in the Islamic calendar, Al-Hakim bi-Amr Allah ascended to power as the Caliph of the Fatimid Caliphate at the tender age of 11. This made him the youngest ruler of the dynasty and the first Fatimid Caliph born in Egypt. Despite his young age, Al-Hakim would go on to rule for nearly 25 years, during which time he became one of the most enigmatic and controversial figures in Islamic history. Al-Hakim's reign was defined by his unpredictable behavior and extreme policies. Historical accounts paint a complex picture of a ruler whose actions swung dramatically between visionary and tyrannical. He lived an austere life, shunning the luxuries typical of rulers of his time, yet he dealt ruthlessly with high-ranking officials and opponents. Al-Hakim demanded absolute loyalty and often punished perceived betrayals with swift and brutal consequences. Determined to purify his society, Al-Hakim launched campaigns against corruption and immorality. However, his methods were so extreme that they bordered on bizarre. For instance, he banned women from appearing in public altogether, issuing a decree that shoemakers should stop crafting shoes for women to prevent them from venturing out. He outlawed alcohol, chess, and even certain popular Egyptian foods, decisions that perplexed and angered his subjects. Because of these drastic measures, he became known as the Mad Caliph. Yet, his actions were not entirely negative. Al-Hakim sought to strengthen his empire's intellectual foundations, promoting science and education. He founded the Dar al-Ilm, House of Knowledge, in Cairo, which became a beacon of learning. Scholars, scientists, and astronomers thrived under his patronage, contributing significantly to the intellectual growth of the Islamic world. Al-Hakim's relationship with religion was equally controversial. As a ruler, he held immense spiritual authority, yet he made decisions that alienated both Muslims and Christians. His most infamous act was the destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, a sacred site for Christians. This act outraged the Christian world and is considered one of the factors that later fueled the Crusades. For Muslims, his policies were equally divisive. He was revered by some and despised by others. Al-Hakim's rule inspired the emergence of the Druze faith, a sect that regards him as a divine figure. To this day, the Druze honor him as a central figure in their beliefs. Al-Hakim's life was as mysterious as his death. One of his peculiar habits was riding out of his palace late at night. These solitary journeys, usually accompanied by only a few attendants, were his way of meditating and escaping the pressures of rule. On February 13th, 1021, 27th of Shaban, 411 AH, he followed his usual routine. Al-Hakim left his palace with 2 grooms, passing through the southern gates of Cairo toward the foothills of the Muqattam Plateau, a region flanked by the Nile River to the west. But this night would be different. Al-Hakim never returned. Hours later, his horse was found wandering, its saddle bloodstained, along with pieces of his garments. There was no trace of the caliph himself. Theories about his disappearance abound. Some believe he was assassinated, possibly by political rivals or disgruntled subjects. Others suggest he may have staged his disappearance to escape the pressures of rule. Some Druze followers believe that he didn't die but instead ascended to a divine realm and will one day return. Al-Hakim bi-Amr Allah's reign remains one of the most debated in Islamic history. He was a ruler who inspired both fear and loyalty, a man whose actions often confounded those around him. while his extreme decrees and erratic behavior earned him the title of the Mad Caliph. His contributions to education and scholarship left a lasting impact on the Islamic world. Even in his absence, al-Hakim's shadow looms large. His disappearance at the age of 35 has turned him into a historical enigma, a figure who defies simple characterization. Was he a misunderstood visionary battling personal demons, or a tyrant whose madness consumed him? The truth may never be fully known, but his story continues to fascinate historians and storytellers alike. Al-Hakim's life and mysterious disappearance remain a powerful reminder of the complexity of history and the individuals who shape it. His reign, for all its contradictions, serves as a testament to the delicate balance between power, belief, and human fallibility. The Lost Origin. The story of the Turin Shroud begins with the biblical account of Joseph of Arimathea, who is said to have wrapped Jesus Christ's body in a linen cloth after the crucifixion and placed it in a tomb. This sacred fabric, believed by many to bear the image of Christ himself, has been a subject of fascination and controversy for centuries. The Shroud of Turin made its first recorded appearance in 1354 in a small church in Lirey, a village in northern France. By 1453, the shroud was in the possession of the Italian royal house of Savoy. They moved it to their new capital, Turin, in 1578, where it has remained ever since, housed in the chapel of the Holy Shroud. The cloth depicts the faint, haunting image of a man, seemingly imprinted on the fabric. The figure is tall, estimated to be between 5'7" and 6", with visible marks of wounds. Thorn punctures crown the head, lacerations cover the back, and bruises mark the shoulders, injuries consistent with the biblical description of Jesus Christ's suffering during the crucifixion. For centuries, the shroud was venerated as a holy relic, believed to be the actual burial cloth of Jesus. It became a focus of pilgrimage and religious devotion, its mysterious image inspiring both awe and devotion among believers. In 1988, a groundbreaking investigation cast doubt on the shroud's authenticity. Using radiocarbon dating, scientists tested pieces of the cloth and concluded it originated between 1260 and 1390 AD. This finding suggested the shroud was likely a medieval forgery. Skeptics pointed to the image's details, suggesting that the bloodstains and imprints were created using pigments and techniques available during the Middle Ages. However, attempts to replicate the image using those methods have consistently failed, leaving some room for doubt. In 2024, new scientific techniques re-examined fragments of the shroud, producing a surprising result. These tests indicated that at least part of the fabric could date back 2,000 years, aligning it with the time of Christ. Researchers theorize that contamination from handling during the Middle Ages, when the shroud was a focal point of religious ceremonies, might have skewed earlier radiocarbon dating results. This discovery reignited the debate. If the shroud is genuinely ancient, could it really be the burial cloth of Jesus? Or is it simply an artifact from the same era? Whether authentic or not, the Shroud of Turin remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Believers see it as a miraculous connection to Christ's suffering and resurrection. Skeptics view it as an impressive piece of medieval craftsmanship. What makes the shroud so compelling is not just the mystery of its origin, but its enduring power to provoke thought, faith, and scientific curiosity. Despite centuries of scrutiny and technological advancements, the truth of the Turin Shroud continues to elude us, making it a symbol of the unresolved questions at the intersection of faith and science. The Shroud story, much like the figure it's said to represent, remains timeless, a testament to humanity's enduring quest for meaning and understanding. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of history's most enigmatic relics. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more fascinating stories. Until next time.